Good morning, Instagram. And I think Facebook's rolling. It just kind of does this thing where it gives me a second. All right. Good morning, Facebook. Hi, everyone. I am Alex Germano here from the Institute of Clinical Excellence for PT on Ice Daily Show. It's Wednesday. That means it's Jerry on Ice. Thank you for joining me a little bit early. I have a patient at 9 o'clock, so I was trying to get this in as fast as I could. Like I said, I'm Alex. I'm a TA within the Modern Management of the Older Adult Division with Christina Jones and Dustin Previtt. I'm really losing it today. Christina Previtt and Dustin Jones. We are starting another advanced concepts today. So that is the advanced course that we have that kind of counters essential foundations. The next cohort starts today. I am TAing with the crew this time, so I'm very excited. So if there's any last minute requests to join this cohort, if you've taken Essential Foundations and you really want to strengthen your ability to take what you've learned in Essential Foundations and what you have learned in this like fitness forward approach, like appropriate loading, appropriate dosage within the older adult, and actually applying it to folks with specific diagnoses such as like osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, Parkinson's disease, like neurological diseases, like this is the course for you. And I know most of us are treating patients with just a whole host of comorbidities. So it is just like the perfect course to help round out your knowledge of the older adult. So like I said, starts today, but if you email us, message us, I'm sure that we can get you in this cohort. So today I'm talking all about screening for BPPV. I think this needs to be an essential part of our practice when we work with older adults. And let me go through why. It takes just as much time as like the dreaded seated lower extremity MMT that you do. Like you sit them in a chair, you ask for like hip flexion, abduction, adduction. And like Medicare finds that MMT so important. And if I don't do it in my documentation, like I get in trouble. And I think it gives me no information whatsoever. So like screening for BPPV can take just as long as that MMT, and you can find out so much more information. And I think it needs to become a very normal part of our evaluations with almost every older adult we see. We're going to talk about why this is. We're going to talk about how we can go into performing these tests and potentially address concerns that you may have. Now, last week in the Hump Day Hustling email, which just as a little shout out reminder, goes out every Wednesday and it has super solid research that helps guide and inform your practice, that you don't have to do any work. You just get like a free email once a week. So make sure you're signed up for it. But last week in that email, we put out an article discussing the risk factors associated with getting BPPV. Now, those risk factors included having a diagnosis of osteoporosis, being female in gender, having a vitamin D deficiency, high cholesterol, head trauma, migraines. Now, this reminds me about like 75% of my patient population, and I have a feeling it looks like a lot of your patient populations. Now, I kind of polled my Instagram crowd and was like, and it's not a very big crowd, but I tried. Polled my crowd and was like, do you guys screen for BPPV, knowing that it's so prevalent within these communities and populations? And like 99% of people said they did not screen. And I asked why, and there were some concerns, and we'll go through those later. But I know you're thinking, like, Alex, even if I see somebody who's female and has osteoporosis, they've never said the room is spinning. So they don't have BPPV. Like, I don't need to do all this extra work and like get them lying down and check their inner ear for all this stuff. So I'm here to argue that point, because it turns out that much like depression and pain, older adults report dizziness differently than younger adults. Go figure. We learned in school that having BPPV, like the one subjective report you're going to hear is I turned my head and the room started spinning. And, there's always this type of like rotary component to the dizziness. Well, in a paper published in 2014, and any paper I talk about today, I will link in show notes. I always say show notes because I'm so used to other podcasts, but I will put in the comments underneath these videos, okay? So in the paper published 2014, they talked about self-report symptoms in younger adults versus older dizzy adults, right? And so they use the dividing line younger and older, 65 years of age. And older adults were 3 times more likely to have BPPV than younger adults, important. And the perception of spinning or rotary dizziness decreased from 60 to 65% in the younger adults. So 60 to 65% of people with BPPV said they had rotary spinning and dizziness. And in the older adults, only 27 to 32% of older adults with BPPV said they had rotary spinning and dizziness. So the odds of reporting true vertigo symptoms are 4 times greater in younger adults. Like the older adults are not reporting rotary dizziness, right? So if we're only relying on those symptoms to rule out objective measurements of BPPV, then we're missing something huge. This study also highlighted that older adults are 2.7 more times likely to have reported a fall with their dizziness. And we see tons of people who fall. Most of the people that I see, and I'm lucky because I'm kind of in this weird like outpatient on wheels setting, is that are people that have just like had one fall and it was like this one-off fall. So I should be screening BPPV in every single one of these patients. And you know what? And I hope that you do feel the need that you need to like screen for this more frequently, because it really is kind of like this hidden diagnosis that might not be as obvious as we've been led to believe. There's no harm in doing the test. You actually may find the root cause of the problem much faster. And interestingly enough, there was another group that reported that 9% of elderly patients without complaints of vertigo had undiagnosed BPPV. Like almost 10% of people, they were screened with the Dix-Hallpike and they found that these people didn't even have any symptoms, but they still had BPPV. So we don't know if we don't test it, right? You can't make good decisions with bad data. Jeff Moore, I'm pretty sure. I think that's my first time I've quoted him in like the 6 or 7 times I've been on this podcast. So I feel like I'm part of the crew now. So if we don't know the data, we just may be sending this patient down a rabbit hole of incredibly silly exercises that are not even like going to fix the problem versus just actually treating the darn thing, because BPPV is very treatable. So hopefully I've convinced you that this is important first and foremost. And it's really just essential to be testing. It just needs to be one of these things in our tool in our toolkit, just ready to go, ready to test on like every single person that we see, because why not? Now let's talk about the concerns, because some people message me and they're like, I would love to do this, Alex, but I'm so scared of older adults' necks. I'm so worried about VBI. I can't get my patient in that position. And I think they're valid concerns, right? So let's talk vertebral basilar insufficiency or vertebral artery insufficiency. And that was definitely like the main concern regarding these maneuvers. So to make you feel better, there's been like no reports of VBI being provoked by Dix-Hallpike testing. There's only been one study. I found one study, and they claim to be the only study that was a report of a hemorrhagic stroke after an Epley maneuver. One time. Now, chances are super, super low that you are going to do anything to their vascular system when doing these maneuvers. And I'm sure the cervical spine crew is just like screaming at me saying like, yes, we know. There is a current CPG for BPPV management, and it does just recommend like a more cautious approach to those with, say, cervical stenosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Down syndrome, et cetera, any like ligamentous instabilities, or if they have limited cervical range. Now, the American Balance Institute, ABI, also continues to recommend VBI screening despite knowing how garbage the sensitivity is for that test. So they've recognized that it's not great, but they still recommend you do it. They didn't really explain why, but that's what they recommend. So you can continue to still screen as it is still best practice in the vestibular world. But there are some ways around limited neck extension. Why we extend the neck in a BPPV test or in the Dix-Hallpike test is to get the crystals to move to a dependent position in the posterior canal. So we're trying to load that canal. Now start thinking about the positions of the canal versus the positions of the body. So we're using neck extension to get the crystal to kind of dump posteriorly. But what I could also do is just get my whole body into extension and kind of cause that crystal to float that way in and of itself. So think about using a table. If you can lift the feet of that table up or like flip the patient the opposite way, whatever, like tilt the head of the bed and flip them the other way, you can achieve extension without having to just use cervical extension. You could also use things like pillows underneath their shoulders, so when you lie them down, there's just a little bit of extra room that they can extend over, and you don't even really need to extend the neck at all. You could, there's some research that people with cervical spine limitations or like limited cervical spine range of motion may need repeated repositioning maneuvers to get it right, but you can definitely still screen in these folks. There's no reason to be afraid of doing this with people despite like having limited range of motion in their neck, which is like again, like all of the people that I see. Just create some extension other ways, right? Set the bed up a certain way, put pillows under their shoulders, etc. Now, there's also the option too for a side-lying Dix Hall pike. There's a great Jeff Walter video on YouTube, and he has the little diagram or the little model of the inner ear, which I find so helpful that he uses. There's a great YouTube video. If you literally just Google side-lying test for BPPV, you will find a great side-lying Dix Hall pike. So you don't need as much cervical extension at all in that either. Now, just make sure with all this testing that you're following up. Dix Hall pike negative predictive values with a negative test are not that great. I think it's 50%-ish. And just consider following up with a test in a few weeks. Don't let just one test tell you that there's absolutely, nothing wrong with them and you can just move on. Make sure you just follow that up with a screen in a few weeks. Now, another issue presented to me was the decreased ability to get the patient lying down or not having an area to lie down effectively. I think about this in my own job a lot. I see a lot of older adults. I see mostly everyone in their home, and they have a footboard on their bed, so I can't even get them rotated the other way on their bed, and I can't get enough extension anywhere, and I can't find enough room. Sometimes people are very cluttered. I can't find enough anything. And there are also, patients who you won't feel comfortable lying down. Maybe it's somebody way bigger than you and you don't feel like you can control them down safely without another person there. We still need to be screening these folks. There's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be doing this. There is a fully supported technique called the abbreviated diagnostic maneuver for posterior BPPV. You will have the patient seated at the front edge of a backed chair. You're going to turn their head about 45 degrees to the side. And then you're going to lie them back so they're resting their they're resting their shoulders on the back of the chair so that you can kind of guide their head back into extension a little bit further. Again, be cognizant of the latency here. Hold for at least 20 seconds. Total of 163 people in this study. They had a fairly good sensitivity of 80% and then a really high specificity of 96% in the seated variation. The same group also created a chair Epley maneuver, which may be worth it to check out in order to treat the people you don't feel comfortable with getting on a table and you don't feel comfortable getting them side lying or supine. So we here at ICE just believe that this is we believe in clinical excellence, and we think this is just one step in bringing your examination techniques to the next level. We should be screening in every patient that has the risk factors: osteoporosis, migraine, total cholesterol is high, vitamin D deficiency, female. We should be screening all of these folks for sure, no matter if they complain of dizziness or not. And then those especially who mention unsteadiness, falls, or dizziness, even despite a rotary component, remember they don't need to have the room spinning to have BPPV. They're older, things change, they're not reporting it as frequently, so just a reminder, those folks deserve a screen for BPPV too. At worst, you have just ruled something out that could be easily fixed, okay? So let me know how this works out for you all, especially if you've tried the seated variations described here. Reminder, all of the papers that I talked about will be in the comments underneath these videos. I would love to just know how you guys liked it, and if you like the variations described and if you start using this more often in your practice. So I'll catch you all in a few weeks. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.